The Lions lost. Why? Because Goff made too many mistakes, or the defense just lost too many players, and it finally came home to roost against a kid as special as Jaden Daniels and an offense that could just roll it up with the mistakes that Goff made. Mark.
Yeah, I mean, there were 5 turnovers on the offensive side of the ball, and obviously Goff made too many mistakes. I mean, we're talking about going into this game, who would you rather have? And, was it a rookie in Jaden Daniels, or is it the veteran in Goff who has really played for the majority of the season, except I think that one game against Houston where he had 5 turnovers at an MVP type level. And, I came into this thing thinking, hey, man, I want the drop back guy that has that running game, that has that many offensive weapons, who has the best offensive line in football. And once again, like I normally am in a lot of things, I was wrong. Jaden Daniels was exceptional. And that's a football team that has played this fine line in Detroit where they've had so many defensive injuries that they've had to say, hey, our offense has got to be what bails us out. Our offense has got to be this show. Our offense has got to put so much pressure on the opponent's offense that they ended up turning over the ball. And that just wasn't the case. Their offense didn't come through. Their offense didn't play and execute that game plan. And therefore, with those 5 turnovers and those extra possessions, Washington was able to come away and hang 45 points on them. So that was, I expected that offense to go out and play exceptionally well, like they have pretty much all season long. And they just weren't able to execute at that level in that critical moment at that time.
Mark Schlereth here on the Rich Eisen Show. What's your impression of the Eagles win?
Listen, it's really interesting because their passing game the last couple of weeks, or at least through the playoffs, has not been very good. But when you can totally control line of scrimmage on both sides of the line of scrimmage, you got a chance to win any game. Your quarterback, like you're in a position right now, if your quarterback doesn't turn it over, you're going to be in every ball game because you dominate the line of scrimmage. You can run the ball with Saquon Barkley, had 205 yards in that game against the Rams. And then, to me, defensively, Jalen Carter is like unblockable right now. And you've got guys like Zach Bond who's flying around making plays. You've got guys off the edge and Smith who are making plays. And their defensive secondary, even with Quinyon Mitchell going down with the injury, Darius Slay played unbelievably well. Like they're a damn good football team. And if they just get like literally, if they just don't have their quarterback turn it over, they've got a chance to be in every single ball game.
Yeah, I guess you could say that for everybody. Every division winner got outgained by their opponent, but they didn't turn it over. That's the key. Every divisional weekend winner had 0 turnovers, despite being outgained. And even, the Ravens outgained the Bills by almost a record amount and lost that game. Mark, you
turn the ball over. You look at it, and Lamar Jackson even talked about it. He said, hey, listen, in these games, in the playoffs, I've been too amped up. I get a little bit antsy or a little bit anxious, and I make some mistakes. And those things reared their ugly head. The interception was, it's a common route combination. You got a little smash with a corner route. You get leverage on the DB. It's perfectly executed versus man coverage. And you throw it 9 yards over your receiver's head, about 6 yards inside the receiver. It's an unbelievably poorly thrown ball. And that gets picked off. And then you have the bad snap, but you regain the ball. And then you try to do too much with the football instead of just eating it. And you put a fumble on the ground. And that's the turnover there. And then, you get the first and goal. It says it's a 14-7 ball game, first and goal from the 2-yard line. And you end up taking a sack on second down. Like those are the type of mistakes that end up costing you football games. Now, he was exceptional toward the end of that game and putting that drive together where Mark Andrews dropped the ball. But that wasn't the best thrown ball. It was a little bit late and a little bit, soft and inside. And so, and I'm not excusing Mark Andrews because he'll tell you 100 out of 100 times I got to catch that ball. But it just was little things like that. It's not just the interception. It's not just the fumble. There were a couple of other mistakes made within that ball game that cost them the football game. And it's everybody. It's Mark Andrews. It's Lamar. It's the coaching staff. There's just little mistakes made along the way that end up costing you. And as you mentioned, the Bills made no turnovers, no mistakes, and they end up getting the victory. And They're the ones going to the AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs.
So then is it fair when Lamar winds up shy of the AFC Championship game that he hosted last year and Jared Goff winds up shy of the NFC Championship game he led at halftime last year, that they just don't have the stuff in the big games? Is that fair to hear into microphones in our business right now? Because you know that's the sort of stuff that gets said. It's just they don't have it. These are the big games. And even with Josh Allen having an MVP campaign, if he doesn't do it in Mahomes' house again, the same thing will be said there. Is that a fair criticism, Mark?
It's fair until you change it. I mean, it's just this. Hey, Peyton Manning was considered, hey, once he gets to the playoffs, Peyton Manning's not good in the playoffs. And until you win it and until you do it in the biggest stages, is it fair? No, it's probably not fair, but it is what it is. I mean, when we get right down to it next year, coming into this season, it'll again be, hey, Lamar has not performed in the playoffs. And you'll put up his stats, and he's a 60% completion guy, or maybe a tick under. He's got as many, turnovers as he does touchdowns, or close to it. And is that fair? No, but the numbers are the numbers. And when you get to the playoffs, man, you got to play well. And he has not played as well as he would like to, or as well as the Baltimore Ravens have needed him to play in that situation. Same with Goff. Same with all those quarterbacks, or all those players. So it's never fair, but that's the narrative that exists when you don't perform on the biggest stage. And that's just one of those things you got to live with, I guess.
I guess Elway had that too, right?
Right, sure. Elway drugged some teams to Super Bowls, and he was 0-3 in those games. And I'll never forget Super Bowl 32, heading out to San Diego to play that game and being a part of that, and hearing even our own fan base, like, oh, we can't stomach the Broncos going back out to another Super Bowl and getting drubbed, because I think at the time when we took off, we're like 13-point underdogs. We're getting drubbed in another Super Bowl. That would just be a fate worse than death, and people literally didn't want us to go. Like, our own fan base was like, oh my gosh, not these guys again. So, I get it. Until you overcome it, that's going to be the narrative. And by the way, in that particular game, when, this one's for John, look at John's stats. John's stats were not good in that game at all. He didn't have good stats. It was Terrell Davis that was the MVP. But all of a sudden, that narrative of can't win the big one, even though you didn't have good stats, was erased. And then, of course, he goes on to win the Super Bowl MVP the next year. But, that's just the way it works. And is it fair? Probably not, but it is what it is.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.